So people are really worried, just to encapsulate here, people are worried that with a lack of testing, they're going to get in trouble at the office. So we thought, let's bring in Sivan Tumarkin, who is an insurance lawyer, co-founding partner of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. This is his area of expertise. You hear me talk about him in the commercials all the time, and he's on the line now. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Well, I got a little throat problem. Could be long COVID. I don't know. No, I'm fine. It's just a little dry in here in the morning.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I got it cleared up now. I think I can speak. Take another sip of water here. I'll be just fine. You know that the environment we're in right now does not allow for easy access to testing, PCR, or even rapid antigen, one of those at-home tests. It's kind of hard to do. Does your employer have a right to demand a test as proof that you have COVID?
No, I don't believe that they do. Ultimately, the laws are what they have always been, which is that if you are sick and can't work, you let your employer know. You obviously connect with your doctor, and nowadays you can connect with your doctor remotely, with most clinics, most doctors having that option. And as long as you're experiencing symptoms that disable you from working, and your doctor provides a note, then that should be fine for your employer.
Yeah, Dr. Dworkin was talking about this morning, though, as a family physician, that he can't really diagnose COVID over the phone or even in person. And you require certain tests. So is it enough for your doctor just to say, whatever he has, she's not well enough to go to work? Is that enough?
You know, Bill, I think we're working within certain limitations right now, and the standard is not going to be the same standard as before. It's not going to be a standard of having to go see your doctor and having your doctor do a full physical or whatever the doctor needs to do. I think that the test does your doctor believe, based on the examination, even if it's virtual, that you're exhibiting certain symptoms that disable you from working at this point in time? And I think employers are going to be in a predicament if they simply ignore what the doctor's saying, despite the limitations, simply because everyone is in the same boat at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we like to believe that the system is just kind of fair, and if it ever got tested in front of an arbitrator or a judge, that they'd go, normally you'd have to get proof, but it was a pandemic and there was no way to do that, so we have to have a little flexibility. That doesn't mean, though, that companies may not try it on, right, to see how it fits. No, look, without a COVID positive test, we're not going to pay you for your time off, or we're going to insist that you come to work. I mean, I like to think there wouldn't many people, bosses would encourage you to come to work with what could be COVID. That seems counterproductive in the long term as well. But does it always work that way, I guess, is my question, that the common sense prevails?
No, the common sense doesn't always prevail. You're absolutely right about that. And there are some kinds of companies out there, whether you're dealing with employers or insurance companies, it depends on who you're dealing with. But I think that a person who is experiencing symptoms that may be COVID, or maybe something else, by the way, it doesn't have to be COVID. I think the way to look at it is, are you experiencing certain symptoms, whether it's fever, headaches, migraines, coughs, runny nose, certain things that would mean that you should stay at home? And I think, you're right in that this is an unusual situation and common sense does not always prevail, but I think an individual out there who's experiencing these symptoms needs to do what is best for themselves from a health standpoint. And ultimately, if the employer is acting unjustly, there are remedies for that. We can't deal with that. But I think employers are also cognizant of the fact they don't want the entire workforce at home as well. I mean, if you're an employer, if you're a grocery store, right? I mean, you don't want somebody coming in and suddenly the next few days, half of your store staff is going to be calling in sick. That's also not common sense for the employer. And we're seeing this more and more now because of Omicron.
We're also in an environment where employees are desperate, or employers are desperate for employees to come in, right? Because they've got staff shortages and they have to function. So maybe that's why I'm getting some notes from people that feel like maybe there's a little bit of pressure on them. Let's talk longer term. Let's say you get COVID or any other issue right now, longer term, and you find yourself on long-term disability. When does that kick in for most companies? Is it after like 90 days or something?
Yeah, at the beginning, most people can either collect EI sick benefits with the government, or many employers have, through their health benefits, short-term disability, which typically runs about 90 days. And long-term disability Again, it's not everyone has it. If you don't have it through work, you may want to consider having it privately, but that will usually kick in within about 90 days. And you have to show that you are disabled from working. And again, the way to do that, just to circle back to the beginning of our conversation, is to have your doctors say that you are exhibiting certain symptoms that disable you from working. And keep in mind something, it doesn't matter if it's COVID related or not. If you have an impairment, if you're unable to work because of lack of focus, concentration, fatigue, anything like that, and it's for a prolonged period of time, you will be entitled to long-term disability if you have that coverage.
I guess what people are concerned about is that we've been talking before Omicron came along and the shortage of testing that it's tough to prove long-term COVID because it's new. Now people are saying, I can't even prove I had COVID because I couldn't get a PCR. So if I couldn't prove I had it in the first place, isn't the insurance company just going to say, you don't have long-term COVID. We don't even know that you have COVID, so we're not going to pay.
Yes, 100%. You're absolutely right. And insurance companies, I mean, knowing them the way that I do, they will try to say that. Absolutely. And in fact, we've seen people coming to us telling us, look, we can't get a test. The insurance company, I wasn't able to get a test. The insurance company doesn't believe that I have it. And of course, we tell them it's not about whether you had COVID or not. It's about whether or not your doctors are saying that the symptoms you're exhibiting right now, based on what we see, the doctors, you are disabled from working. Now, we have a different problem, Bill, which is that some people who are on LTD can't actually go and get their treatments. Let's say physiotherapy, right? You try to get your treatments, but now you can't because you're exhibiting certain symptoms of COVID and you're not allowed to go
and sometimes as part of collecting your long-term disability, you're obligated to treatment.
You got it. Exactly. So insurance companies turn back and say, you know, you're not engaging in reasonable treatments. And the person says, but I think I have COVID. I just can't prove it because there are no tests. And so, again, it's a predicament, right, with insurance companies. But, I mean, I want to tell people out there, insurance companies can't act unreasonably. And because of the situation right now, the lack of testing, for them to take that kind of a position that somehow you're not compliant with your treatments because you can't go in, because you can't get a test to clear you of COVID, that would be unreasonable for the insurance company to do that because you need that money to survive.
Again, you'd hope they would be reasonable about it, but they may try and on for size as well, right? If I can get you to, if I can cut you off LTD, I'm going to do that.
Exactly.
You find most insurance companies do they lean towards trying to get people off LTD, or are they actually being fair and they're simply trying to weed out people who are cheating?
No, I think it's half and half. I think in fairness to them, a lot of times they are trying to weed out the people who are trying to cheat the system because you do have those. On the other hand, I can come up with so many examples, Bill, where it is so blatantly obvious that the person is in fact entitled to LTD. And I'm not even talking about COVID. I'm talking about multiple sclerosis. I'm talking about other type cancer, things that if I were just share with you a few facts about a particular case, I can't. There's confidentiality, but you would say to yourself, what are they even thinking? Well, what they're thinking is that if we can avoid paying, then we will, because it's more money in our pockets, the insurance company's pocket. So I think it's 50-50. I think it depends on not necessarily the insurance company, but the adjuster that you're dealing with. Some of them are fair and some of them are not. It's just that simple.
Well, to our listeners, I give you permission to send a copy of this interview to your boss or your insurance company if you're being hassled. Say, I heard on the radio you can't do that. And you don't want Sivan knocking on your door either. Thank you for talking to us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right. There you go. So you should still be able to collect. You should be able to take time off now, even without a PCR test. And should you require long-term disability, shouldn't really impact on it. But you may have to be a little bit forceful because insurance companies and employers may try to convince you otherwise. But there you go. You do have rights. Sivan Tumarkin, an insurance lawyer and co-founding partner at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP.